Diego explained that for a dime of coke, the prostitute had told him what had happened to the coke for which Slim was responsible. According to Diego, the prostitute had eaten Slim's mind up with the prospect of sex in exchange for coke. They ended up in the prostitute's apartment snorting coke and having sex. Slim finally broke down and admitted his guilt to the charges being brought against him. It was now a matter of punishing him. I was instructed to take Slim into the room where I had been initiated while the punishment was decided. Inside the room, I couldn't help but notice the look of horror on Slim's face. It seemed like he could sense his punishment. I asked him about the night with the prostitute. He told me that she was an attractive girl. She grabbed his crotch and promised to give him oral sex in exchange for a bag of coke. He agreed and planned to pay for it out of his cut of the money. They went to her apartment. She quickly undressed and told him to do the same. They snorted some coke and started having sex. She did a lot more with him than what she had originally offered, Slim explained. But he had no plans of giving her more coke. The next thing he knew, he woke up on her bed. She was gone, and so was the cocaine. Slim said that the prostitute claimed he gave it to her, but he didn't remember doing that. I began scolding him and telling him he was a stupid fool for getting himself into that situation. "They're gonna kill me, man. They're gonna kill me," Slim said as he busted out crying. The door opened suddenly and we were called out. It was time for Slim to be sentenced. We walked out of the room together. Slim stood in front of the committee. I sat on the window ledge and waited to hear what had been decided. Slim was asked if he wanted to remain a king. He did. He was then given two choices. One was to get violated out of the gang, and the other was to take a 1-minute head-to-toe violation. Slim asked for time to make up his mind. His request was denied. He was then advised that if he planned to continue using cocaine, he was better off quitting the gang. "You're snorting, but you can't handle it, and that will not be tolerated," Pito told Slim. Slim decided to get violated out of the gang. I guess he must have been really hooked on coke to make a decision like that. But then again, his choice wasn't any better. Local gave me the names of the 3 guys who were going to have the honor of beating Slim out of the gang and told me to go get them. The guys were part of the Pee Wee faction of the Latin Kings. Crazy, Tony, Cisco, and Spade were all about the same age and height as Slim, but they were much heavier and stronger. They seemed very anxious and enthusiastic about carrying out the order they were given. Paco got up, grabbed a stopwatch, and took all the guys into the beating room. I was instructed to go get the other guys who were charged with rape. As a member of the Latin Kings, phrases like "I will die for you" were readily used. It was part of the lingo, a way of letting a member know they belonged. Brothers, that's what we were, brothers. Slim, however, was not given any brotherly treatment. He was not given any advice or offered any help. No importance was given to his addiction. The answer to his problem was an ass whipping. There was no way Slim could get out of that clubhouse that day without being hurt. Ace, Jimbo, and Lucky were part of the Juniors faction of the Latin Kings. They had been members of the gang for a while. They were charged with rape of a queen. Although rape of a queen was one of the most serious charges one could face as a member of the Kings, these guys came in joking and laughing and noticeably confident of their innocence. They stood before the committee and were told to wait until Paco was through dealing with Slim. From the beating room, you could hear Slim screaming and begging for mercy. You could also hear the guys doing the beating taunting him while they punished him. I sat wondering if Blanca would charge me with rape. I became nervous. I began thinking that the reason I was asked to play usher was so that I could be dealt with also. Finally, the screaming stopped and Paco walked out of the room and made a comment about how weak Slim was and how he took the beating like a pussy. Crazy, Tony, Cisco, and Spade came out of the room with smiles on their faces as if they had just won some type of big contest. They described Slim as a pussy, a punk, and a sissy, among other things. Slim had collapsed from the beating. Loco immediately ordered those who had beat Slim to pick him up and carry him outside. When they carried Slim out, he had this look of horror on his face. It was pretty obvious that Slim had been seriously hurt. He was having trouble breathing and couldn't even walk on his own. I felt sorry for him, but I made sure not to show it. I didn't want to be thought of as soft. I walked into the door, locked the door behind them, and went back to my place on the window ledge. Now a minute had passed when I heard screams outside. I looked out the window and saw Slim lying on the concrete, being beaten by just about all of the Pee Wee Kings. I called what was happening to Local's attention. Local said that since Slim was not part of the gang anymore, he was on his own. He then asked me if I had any problems with that. Although I did, I answered no. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Slim being kicked and hit with bats and bottles while he lay there on the street, unable to defend himself. The regrets I had about joining the Kings were growing stronger by the minute, but I knew that if I changed my mind now, I would get the same treatment as Slim. I began mentally kicking myself for not giving life in Puerto Rico more of a chance. I wondered how my family was and wished that I could turn back time so that I could be back with them again. My daydreams were interrupted by Lalo's voice calling out my name. I was told to get away from the window and go stand by the door. The charges against the 3 junior Kings were about to be heard. The guys' confident attitude had not changed a bit. They stood before the committee with big smiles on their faces. Local asked them if they knew the seriousness or the nature of the charges. Ace replied, "The bitch didn't have to be raped. She gives it up to everybody." They began laughing simultaneously but were soon quieted by the reminder that the girl who was accusing them had plenty of witnesses against them. Local told them to have a seat and keep quiet until it was their turn to talk. I was then told to call in Dimples and her witnesses. Dimples was a queen from Cortland and Whipple. She had the reputation of being a wild child who was easy to lay. Her witnesses included Morena, Cubana, and 2 other queens from Cortland and Whipple who I had never met. A couple of kings from that same section were also present to speak on her behalf. Local asked Dimples if she knew the seriousness of the charges she was making against Ace. He also asked her if she knew what the consequence would be if they found her to be lying. Dimples said that she knew what she was getting into, and she also knew what had happened to her. Dimples began giving her account of what had happened. She came to Cadezi and Armitage looking for Morena. She ran into Ace, who told her that Morena had just left the hood and then invited her to smoke some weed. They walked back toward Cortland and Whipple together. They stopped and sat down on the steps of an abandoned building located on Homer and Albany Streets, about 3 blocks from Cortland and Whipple. Dimples admitted that she had always had a crush on Ace, so she didn't mind when he started making advances towards her. They began kissing and touching and decided to go inside the building where there were mattresses laying in just about every room. That particular building was used for everything from partying to a hideout to a hotel. They were about to enter the building when Jimbo, Lucky, and 2 other kings from Cortland and Whipple called out to them. After hanging out with them for a few minutes, Ace and Dimples proceeded inside. Dimples and Ace immediately began getting sexually intimate while the other guys were outside getting high. After a few minutes, Lucky walked in on Ace and Dimples as they were having sex. Meanwhile, Morena, Cubana, and the other 2 queens had arrived and were outside talking to the guys. Tears were now running down Dimples' face. She began sobbing and stuttering as she talked. She explained that Ace noticed that Lucky was watching them and asked if he wanted to be next. Dimples protested and tried to push Ace off her, but he held her down. Lucky kneeled over her and put his hand over her mouth so she couldn't scream. She started squirming and fighting with them. Ace got angry, punched her in the stomach, and then continued having sex with her. After the pain in her stomach had gone away, she began fighting with them again. This is when Jimbo walked in. He asked what was going on. Lucky told him to help hold Dimples down. Jimbo hesitated, but did as Ace told him when he was asked the second time. Dimples bit the hand Lucky had over her mouth. He went crazy and started beating her savagely. Lucky choked her and threatened to kill her if she screamed. Ace got off her and helped hold Dimples down while Lucky penetrated her. She pleaded for Ace to help her, but all he did was say, "Shut up, bitch. This is a dream come true for you." After Lucky got off her, Jimbo penetrated her. When Jimbo was on top of her, Ace was telling Lucky that he wanted to fuck Dimples in the ass. Dimples made one last attempt to get away from them. She somehow freed her mouth and began screaming at the top of her lungs. Those who were outside heard her and quickly ran inside. They saw what was going on and came to her aid. Ace, Lucky, and Jimbo just stood there fixing their clothes and grinning from ear to ear as if nothing had happened. They said that Dimples asked for it, but then couldn't handle it. Morena flipped out and had to be restrained when she repeatedly tried to attack Ace, Lucky, and Jimbo. Cubana and the other queens consoled Dimples and helped her get dressed. Dimples began crying uncontrollably as she told her story. Her words became hard to understand. She was obviously traumatized by what had happened. Throughout her story, members of the committee sat there with blank expressions on their faces. Ace, Jimbo, and Lucky, on the other hand, made disbelieving faces in response to every accusation. Dimples was asked to sit down. Morena was called to speak before the committee. Morena had an angry expression on her face. She began by saying that she didn't know what went on before she went into the building, but that if Dimples volunteered her body, the guys wouldn't have had to beat her. She looked at the guys being accused as if she was ready to commit murder. She screamed, "These ain't no kings, they're fucking pussies." She went at them. Loco jumped from behind the table and grabbed her just as she was ready to hit Ace. I'm cool, Morena said as Loco took her toward the door. Ace and Lucky were holding her when we went in. Jimbo was getting off her, Morena said. Loco turned to Dimples' other witnesses and asked them to corroborate Morena's claim. Loco asked the girls one at a time, and they all agreed with Morena. Loco finally released Morena. She sat on a window ledge with her face in her hands, mumbling something. The two King brothers, serving as Dimples' witnesses, were called before the committee. The point was made to them that they were from the same King section as Dimples. They were asked if they knew Dimples personally or just as a Queen's sister. The first one to answer was a short, stocky guy with a cranky voice named Mario. He said that he had known Dimples for a long time and that he thought of her as a bitch because of the many sexual partners she had. Mario said that he was only there because Dimples was a Queen's sister and therefore should not be subjected to abuse. He confirmed what Morena had said and then turned to the accused and said, "You all fucked up, man. You fucked up." The other king was a tall Cuban guy named Dice who looked African American. "These brothers tripped out," Dice said. "She's a queen. They shouldn't do that." Then he sat down. Dimples was asked if she had anything else to add, but she said no. "I have something to say," Morena said. Loco immediately went to her to make sure she wouldn't go off again. "Don't hold me, I'm alright," Morena told Loco. "These so-called brothers raped a queen. She may be a bitch, but she's still a queen," Morena exclaimed. "Dimples has thrown down for the nation many times, and she has earned her crown." She was reminding those present, "We're queens and kings, leaders, not followers," Morena screamed. She walked back to the window ledge and sat down. The whole room was quiet. It seemed as if everybody was afraid to even breathe. Morena had a reputation of becoming violent when pushed. Knowing that, Loco sat next to her as the proceeding continued. Ace, Lucky, and Jimbo were called up. Ace stood up by himself and said that he would talk for all of them. Ace explained that when he and Dimples were having sex, she kept saying that she had thought he would be better and that she was going to need more after they were finished. Dimples jumped up and called him a liar and was quickly restrained by Mario and Dice. Ace went on. He said that when Dimples saw Lucky in the room, she said, "If you like what you see, come on, get some." Ace supposedly thought Dimples was only teasing and even tried to cover up her nakedness. She pushed him away and called Lucky to her. Lucky wasted no time in agreeing to the invitation, Ace said. He dropped his pants, told me to get out of the way, and went at it. Ace explained that he got mad and punched Dimples in the stomach and then in the eye. After he hit her, she kept teasing him about not being man enough for her and that he should take sex lessons from Lucky. At that moment, Jimbo walked in and decided that he wanted to take a turn. But Dimples refused until Lucky talked her into it. Once Jimbo had fucked her, she said, "Damn, Ace, even Jimbo is better than you." Ace said that he lost his temper and began whipping her, and that's why she started screaming. He ended by saying she didn't get raped. She was just disappointed that there were only 3 of us and not more. Lucky and Jimbo were asked if they wanted to do anything. Lucky said no. Jimbo said that if she had not invited him, he would not have touched her, and that he only did because he was high. The accusations were finally over, and everybody else was asked to leave the room until a decision was made. I walked everyone to the door and took advantage of the opportunity to talk to Cubana. We agreed on getting together after the meeting. As soon as I closed the door, the guys in the committee busted out laughing. I looked at them, wondering what they found so funny, but knew better than to ask the question. Lalo asked Loco what they were going to do. Loco was too busy laughing to answer. Paco said that everyone knew Dimples was a horny bitch, and that she probably did give it up to all three brothers. Loco got up and pounded on the table in a very serious manner. It was hard to believe that this was the same guy who had just been holding his side in pain from laughter. Loco told everyone that even though Dimples was considered a bitch, she was still a queen, and it seemed pretty obvious to him that she was telling the truth. Did you hear the bullshit those brothers made up? They ought to be violated for not thinking up a better lie, Loco said. He said that if justice was not served, regardless of the fact that the accused brothers were down for the nation, it would be like giving the go-ahead for other brothers to disrespect the queens whenever they felt like it. Gordo commented on the fact that Dimples was known more for her sex life than anything else. Finding the brothers guilty would be taking the respect they had earned and giving it to Dimples. The decision was made to find the guys guilty only to keep the Cortland and Whipple section happy and to ensure respect for other Latin queens. A private meeting with the juniors and seniors would be called to let that be known. I realized that there was a favoritism game going on between the leaders of the Cadezi and Armitage Latin Kings. I wondered if I was one of the favorite sons of the Latin Kings. After all, I was the only one outside the seniors and juniors that knew about the secret decision. I realized that there was a favoritism game going on between the leaders of the Cadezi and Armitage Latin Kings. I wondered if I was one of the favorite sons of the Latin Kings. After all, I was the only one outside the seniors and juniors that knew about the secret decision. The accused and the accusers were called back in to hear the decision. When it was heard, Dimples' sadness disappeared in an instant. Ace, Lucky, and Jimbo quickly protested. The only thing that they were told was to stay after the meeting had been adjourned for their discipline. I went to the door and called everybody in. The subjects that were spoken about were again mentioned. I was again given a welcome into the Latin Kings Nation. Lalo said a prayer and the meeting was officially adjourned. Amor de Rey. Everybody said simultaneously as they placed their right fist upon their hearts and threw up the Latin King's hand sign. This time I joined them. I was now allowed. I was now a king. I tried to hurry outside to meet Cubana, but I was called back by Loco. He took me into the beating room and advised me not to say anything regarding the secret decision. He told me that the whipping Slim would get would be considered a slap on the wrist compared to what would happen to me if I said anything to anybody. I assured him I could be trusted. Loco gave me a plastic bag with about a half ounce of weed inside, and then I was on my way. The sounds of the kings pounding their right fists over their hearts echoed as I walked out. I was part of the family now, a family that was willing to die or kill for me.